The morning sunlight streamed through the tall, arched windows of the Maricopa County courtroom, bouncing off polished wooden panels and the cold steel of the jury box. It was early October, but the Arizona heat already pressed against the building like an invisible weight. Cameras clicked furiously as reporters jostled for position, murmuring in hushed tones. The tension in the air was almost palpable, the kind that makes your chest tight and your stomach curl into nervous knots. Today, the courtroom wasn't just a stage for legal proceedings. It had become a theater of raw emotion, trauma, and fear. At the center of it all sat Lily Carter, barely 3 years old, her tiny hand buried in her mother's palm. She wore a soft pink cardigan, her brown curls slightly askew, and eyes wide with curiosity, tinged with the dull sheen of anxiety. For weeks she had barely spoken, traumatized after witnessing an event that had left even seasoned investigators shaken. Her small, fragile frame seemed swallowed by the enormous courtroom, yet everyone instinctively leaned in toward her. Lily's presence alone commanded attention. The adults in the room tiptoed around the weight of what she carried silently, each aware that the outcome of the trial might hinge on this delicate child. A hush fell over the courtroom as Ranger entered. He was a German shepherd, massive and imposing, wearing the unmistakable police K9 harness. His handler, Officer Miguel Hernandez, kept a tight grip on the leash, moving cautiously across the polished floor. Ranger's coat gleamed under the harsh lights, muscles rippling with restrained energy. His nose twitched as he sniffed the air, ears pricked, scanning every shadow, every movement. The courtroom had seen dogs before, but Ranger was different. His presence alone seemed to magnify the room's tension. Lily's mother, Corinne Carter, tightened her grip on her daughter's hand. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the low murmur of reporters and the shuffling of feet. Corinne's eyes were red-rimmed, exhaustion etched deep into her features. She had spent sleepless nights worrying, praying her little girl would remember something, anything, to help the police bring the man who had destroyed their lives to justice. The trial had been a whirlwind of testimony, forensic evidence, and witness statements, but nothing had cracked the case open. The one person who might hold the key was right there, tiny and trembling, her voice lost somewhere behind fear and shock. Detectives sat rigidly at the prosecution table, exchanging subtle glances, their hands resting near their notepads but ready to spring into action. Detective Raymond Hughes, a veteran with 30 years on the force, had seen trauma before, but nothing like this. He leaned forward slightly, trying to get a better look at Lily without startling her. He watched Ranger's nose twitch, saw the sudden, almost imperceptible tension ripple through the dog's muscles. Something was about to happen. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind, called the room to order. Her gavel hit the bench with authority, echoing like a gunshot. "We will proceed. All cameras hold your positions, and let the record reflect the presence of the K9 unit." Her voice cut through the murmurs, but the courtroom still buzzed with a low, electric tension. Everyone felt it, the kind that crawls under your skin and makes your pulse hammer in your throat. Ranger stopped, lifting his head, ears locking forward as if sensing something invisible to everyone else. He fixed his gaze on Lily. The room fell silent in a collective, unspoken gasp. A child so small, a dog so large, and yet there was a moment of unexplainable recognition, as if some unseen thread had pulled them together. Lily, shaking slightly, looked up at her mother, then back at Ranger. Something inside her stirred. She raised her tiny hand toward him. Corinne swallowed hard, the words catching in her throat. "Lily," she said softly, unsure if she should intervene or let the moment unfold naturally. She felt a mix of fear and hope twisting inside her chest. What if this was it? What if her daughter, in her own fragile way, held the key to something no one else could see? Her heart hammered in her ears as she watched Lily take a hesitant step forward. Lily's lips parted and she whispered 2 words. The words were soft, fragile, almost lost in the vast courtroom, but they carried a weight that no one could ignore. Ranger stiffened, his body going rigid, muscles coiling like springs ready to snap. A low, guttural growl rumbled from deep in his chest, reverberating through the room and making the jury shift uneasily in their seats. Gasps escaped from reporters. The defendant, a man whose calm exterior had masked a sinister history, paled visibly. His eyes darted toward the child, then to Ranger, and fear flickered across his face, brief but undeniable. The courtroom erupted in a mix of whispers, exclamations, and stunned silence. The judge's gavel came down again, louder this time, trying to restore order, but even her voice couldn't calm the collective energy of shock. Ranger's growl deepened, a warning that carried the weight of recognition, loyalty, and something primal that no words could fully capture. Everyone knew the dog wasn't reacting to a stranger. Ranger had recognized something, someone. The kind of recognition that only comes when danger, fear, or truth is undeniable. Detective Hughes' eyes widened, heart pounding. He exchanged a look with his partner, Detective Maria Sanchez, who had been taking notes but had frozen mid-sentence. They both knew the implications. Ranger had never reacted like this in training or on the field, not even to violent criminals, bomb threats, or armed suspects. This was different. This was instinct and memory colliding. And Lily, tiny, trembling Lily, had somehow unlocked it with 2 words. Corinne's breath caught. She had no idea if her daughter remembered correctly or if it was a lucky guess, but the effect was undeniable. The defendant's confident posture had crumbled, his jaw tight, fists clenched. His legal team whispered urgently, trying to maintain composure, but the tension was palpable. The courtroom had shifted from sterile procedure to something raw, real, and terrifying. The past and present collided in a single, charged moment. Ranger stepped closer, his growl vibrating through the floorboards. Lily, barely holding herself upright, took another small step forward. Her voice quivered, but the 2 words repeated, stronger this time. The dog's ears flattened slightly, a warning and a reassurance all at once. It was as if the animal understood the weight of her words, the truth they carried. Every adult in the courtroom felt a shiver run down their spines. The energy was electric, uncontainable, and utterly cinematic, a scene that would be replayed in headlines, social feeds, and courtroom reports for weeks to come. The defendant's eyes darted to the gallery, where relatives of the victims sat silently, watching. Some reached for tissues, others whispered prayers under their breath. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Ranger's growl cut through the tension again, a low, warning vibration that seemed to echo against the wood panels and marble floors. Lily's mother felt tears welling up, her body trembling with fear, pride, and hope all at once. Her daughter, so small and fragile, was doing something she could never have imagined in her worst nightmares, confronting darkness with innocence, bravery, and truth. The judge's gavel hit once more, sharp and decisive. "Order," she commanded, though even she seemed momentarily taken aback by the tension in the room. Everyone froze, hearts pounding, breaths held. This was no longer just a courtroom drama. It was a collision of innocence, instinct, and justice in its rawest form. And Lily, holding her tiny hand out to Ranger, whispered the words one last time. Ranger stopped, his nose twitching, then barked sharply, a single clear bark that cut through the silence. The room collectively exhaled, though no one moved. Something had changed, something had shifted, and no one would forget this moment. Outside the courtroom, cameras flashed relentlessly. Reporters scribbled frantic notes, recording every detail. But inside, the real story was unfolding. A tiny girl, a police dog, and 2 words that no one yet fully understood. For Detective Hughes and Officer Hernandez, the realization was immediate. This wasn't just evidence. This was a breakthrough. Lily had opened a door that no one else could, and Ranger was the key. And somewhere deep in the tension-choked courtroom, the truth waited, poised to reveal itself. As Lily stepped back into her mother's arms, trembling and exhausted, the courtroom remained frozen, every eye fixed on her. What had she just done? And more importantly, what would come next? The whispers began again, but now they were laced with wonder, fear, and curiosity. Something monumental had just occurred, and everyone in that room knew it. The day had started like any other in the trial, but it would end in history, marked forever by the bravery of a 3-year-old girl and the unwavering instincts of a police dog. The room was still vibrating with tension when Ranger barked sharply, a single note that sliced through the courtroom like a blade. Murmurs erupted anew, reporters leaning forward in disbelief, jurors gripping their seats, witnesses frozen mid-breath. Detective Hughes exchanged a look with Officer Hernandez, who was struggling to keep Ranger calm. The dog's gaze never wavered from the defendant, and the man's hands twitched as though he wanted to flee, though every exit in the courtroom was blocked. Sweat glistened on his forehead. Fear had replaced the arrogance he'd worn so effortlessly for weeks. Corinne Carter held Lily tighter, her fingers digging into her daughter's tiny shoulders. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, her voice trembling yet firm. Her own heart pounded like a drum in her chest. She had no idea what Lily had said to trigger Ranger, but the effect was undeniable. Every person in the courtroom seemed to lean forward, caught in the magnetic pull of the child, the dog, and the quiet, terrifying authority of truth that neither spoke in words nor gestures alone. Ranger's growl deepened, low and guttural, reverberating through the polished wood floor. The defendant's eyes darted, looking for something, anything, to regain control. But there was nothing. The man who had once seemed untouchable, the one who had manipulated witnesses, intimidated neighbors, and evaded the law with practiced cunning, now appeared small, cornered, and human. Every fiber of his being screamed panic, yet the courtroom was paralyzed, everyone watching, waiting. Even the judge, whose gavel had brought order to chaos hundreds of times, seemed momentarily caught in the gravity of the moment. Detective Hughes finally leaned in, whispering urgently to Officer Hernandez. "He knows, he recognizes her. Ranger isn't reacting to fear, he's reacting to him. That's the suspect." Hernandez's eyes widened, the realization hitting him like lightning. Ranger's instincts were nearly flawless, trained to detect threats, to protect, and to respond to cues no human might see. And now, the dog had confirmed something even the detectives hadn't dared to hope. The tiny girl had identified the man directly responsible for the crime. Across the courtroom, the defense attorney opened his mouth, his voice quivering slightly, but no word seemed appropriate. He gestured at the judge, muttered something about objections and procedure, but the room's energy swallowed him. Ranger was still locked on the defendant, growling intermittently, muscles taut, ears pinned back, nostrils flaring. The air was thick with fear, curiosity, and a strange reverence. Every person there understood that this wasn't just courtroom theater. It was a collision of innocence, instinct, and the harsh, unflinching truth. Lily took another hesitant step forward, tiny shoes scuffing against the wooden floor. She raised her hand toward Ranger again, voice trembling but clear. She repeated the same two words she had whispered moments before. "That's him," she said, though her voice barely rose above a whisper. The courtroom froze. Even the bailiffs, trained to maintain order in chaos, took a collective step back. Ranger's growl became a bark, a warning, a recognition, a declaration that this was the person who had hurt Lily and who would not escape justice now. The defendant's knees buckled slightly, his composure crumbling. Beads of sweat slid down his temple, his confident mask shattered. He opened his mouth to say something, but Ranger barked again, closer this time, more forceful. The handler tightened his grip, but the dog refused to back down. Lily's words had awakened something primal, and the room felt it, the almost mystical way a child and a dog could expose truth that adults had missed. The judge's gavel slammed down again, but even that couldn't suppress the electric tension vibrating in the room. Detective Hughes scribbled a quick note in his pad, a mixture of relief and disbelief washing over him. This could change everything," he muttered under his breath. Officer Hernandez nodded, keeping a wary eye on Ranger, whose body remained coiled and alert. The dog's reaction was textbook, instinctual, and deeply reliable. If Lily had said those words without any understanding of what they meant, it was extraordinary. If she remembered, if she truly recognized the defendant, it was monumental. Either way, the courtroom was witnessing something rare and profound. Corinne's chest tightened as she watched her daughter, her mind racing with emotion. Pride, fear, hope, and anxiety collided inside her, each demanding attention. "You're so brave, baby," she whispered, brushing a stray curl from Lily's face. The little girl looked up briefly, eyes shining with tears. She didn't fully understand herself. She had no idea the power of her words, no comprehension of how Ranger's reaction had shifted the entire room. All she knew was fear, and yet she had confronted it with a courage that dwarfed even the tallest adults present. The defendant's eyes darted around desperately, scanning the gallery, the attorneys, the judge. His gaze landed on Lily and panic overtook reason. His mind scrambled for escape, for a way to rewrite the narrative he had so carefully controlled. But there was none. Ranger's growls and barks, combined with the child's simple declaration, had collapsed his carefully built walls. Every person in the courtroom could see it. The veneer of control had shattered, replaced by raw, naked fear. Suddenly, a hush fell over the room as the prosecuting attorney, Emily Rhodes, rose from her seat. Her heels clicked sharply against the wooden floor as she approached the child, keeping her movements calm and deliberate. "Lily," she said gently, crouching to the girl's level, "can you show us what happened?" The child hesitated, eyes flicking to Ranger, then back at her mother. Corinne nodded reassuringly. Lily's tiny hand trembled as she reached forward, pointing directly at the defendant. Her voice, though small, carried the certainty of remembered truth. "Him." A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Reporters' cameras clicked like gunfire, jurors leaned forward, and witnesses held their breath. Ranger barked once more, a sharp, authoritative sound that seemed to echo against the walls. Every person in the room felt the energy shift, like the air itself had thickened with revelation. The defendant flinched, as if the dog's growls had physically struck him. His attorney leaned close, whispering frantically, but the words fell on deaf ears. Nothing could reverse the course now. The tiny child had spoken, and the dog had confirmed it. Detective Hughes and Officer Hernandez exchanged one last glance before Hughes whispered, "We need to secure him now, quietly." The courtroom felt like a volcano on the verge of eruption, every heartbeat magnified. Ranger's eyes never left the defendant, muscles taut like springs ready to coil. The little girl had broken through the wall of silence and fear, unlocking a chain reaction that would lead to justice. Every person in the room understood that this was no ordinary trial. It was a convergence of innocence, instinct, and truth in its most undeniable form. Corinne hugged Lily closer, whispering reassurance into her ear. "You did it, baby. You're safe now." Lily buried her face in her mother's chest, small shoulders shaking, overwhelmed by the weight of what she had just done. She had faced her fear, spoken the truth, and in doing so had shifted the course of justice itself. Ranger's bark subsided into a low growl, then finally into a tense, watchful stance, as if he were silently approving the child's bravery. The judge finally spoke, her voice firm but tinged with awe. "Let the record reflect the identification made by the child witness and corroborated by the K-9 unit." Her gavel fell once more, echoing like thunder. The courtroom collectively exhaled, though no one moved. The moment had passed, but the tremors of it lingered, each person in the room carrying a memory that would not fade. This was history unfolding in real time. A 3-year-old girl and a police dog confronting darkness, courage and truth intertwined in a way no one could ignore. Outside, cameras flashed, capturing every expression, every reaction, every tremble of fear and hope. Social media would erupt within hours. News outlets would broadcast the story as a marvel, a miracle, a testament to bravery and instinct. But inside the courtroom, the real drama continued to unfold. The defendant, pale and shaking, was quietly guided to a secure area by officers, his eyes flicking nervously to Lily as though she could still reach into his mind and unmask every secret. Ranger remained poised, alert, protective, the ultimate guardian of truth and innocence. And through it all, Lily remained in her mother's arms, tiny, trembling, yet unbroken. Her 2 words had changed everything. In one fleeting, terrifying, and courageous moment, a 3-year-old girl and a police dog had rewritten the course of justice. The courtroom had erupted, not with chaos but with the silent, undeniable force of truth revealed. And somewhere, deep inside that tension-choked room, everyone realized that this was only the beginning. The courtroom buzzed with an electric undercurrent, one that refused to be tamed even as order was officially restored. The defendant sat handcuffed, shoulders slumped, staring down at the polished floor as if the cracks in the wood might swallow him whole. Ranger remained rigid, muscles coiled like steel springs, eyes locked unwaveringly on the man who had brought terror into a child's life. Every breath in the room felt charged, each heartbeat amplified, each whisper of movement catching like a spark in dry tinder. The air smelled faintly of polished wood, ink, and tension so thick it seemed tangible. Detective Hughes, seated at the prosecution table, scribbled notes frantically while keeping a careful eye on the little girl. Lily clung to her mother's side, exhausted yet alert, her eyes wide and shimmering with residual fear. Something in her gaze had changed. It was no longer just confusion or apprehension. There was a spark of purpose, a fragile but undeniable courage that even adults found inspiring and terrifying. Officer Hernandez adjusted Ranger's harness, keeping the dog steady, though Ranger's growls rumbled deep in his chest, vibrating through the courtroom like a low drum of impending revelation. The judge's gavel struck again, though softer this time, attempting to calm the chaos without dispelling the lingering energy. "We will continue with the testimony," she announced, her voice carrying the weight of authority yet tinged with caution. "The child witness may demonstrate the identification again if necessary. All parties are to remain calm." Her words barely registered. The room had already crossed into a state of raw, kinetic tension. Everyone knew the identification was no longer just a formality. It was the fulcrum upon which the case now teetered. Lily's small hand trembled as Corinne whispered reassurance. "You're safe, baby, just show them." The little girl nodded faintly, staring at Ranger and then back at the defendant. Ranger's ears flattened slightly, a signal of cautious approval. The crowd seemed to hold its collective breath. Even reporters who had seen countless courtroom dramas were caught in the hypnotic pull of this moment. The room felt suspended in time, like a cinematic frame stretched across seconds that would never truly pass. Detective Hughes motioned to Officer Hernandez. "Go slowly, let her lead." Hernandez nodded, leash in hand, keeping Ranger steady while allowing the dog's instincts to guide his positioning. Ranger stepped forward a few inches, tail taut but unmoving, muscles rippling with restrained energy. Lily stepped out from behind her mother, tiny fingers brushing Corinne's coat, and moved toward the center of the courtroom, her voice trembling but clear. "That's him," she said, pointing directly at the defendant. The defendant's body stiffened visibly, a vein pulsing at his temple. His lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically, but the man barely registered. Ranger growled again, low and deliberate, and the sound reverberated through the floorboards. It wasn't just a warning, it was acknowledgement, recognition, and the primal force of justice articulated in pure instinct. Gasps ran through the jury, who sat frozen, unable to process the extraordinary combination of a child's memory and a dog's trained instincts converging in one perfect, terrifying moment. Suddenly, a faint murmur spread through the gallery. A witness seated in the back, previously hesitant, rose slowly, eyes wide. I saw it too," she stammered. Her voice trembled, but the room leaned in. He forced the child into the alley. I didn't know if anyone believed her." Her admission hung in the air like a fragile shard of light, confirming what Lily had only hinted at. The defendant's eyes widened, darting around the room. Panic replaced arrogance. Every person in the courtroom felt it. The walls of deceit, carefully constructed over months, were cracking under the simplest, most undeniable truth. Corinne's breath caught. She gripped Lily tighter, pulling her small body close. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "You're doing so well." The child's gaze flickered to Ranger, who nudged slightly against Officer Hernandez's side, then back to the defendant. Ranger's movements were subtle yet commanding, a dance of precision and instinct. Detective Hughes leaned forward, pen poised, heart racing. This wasn't merely evidence. It was a breakthrough that would ripple through every aspect of the investigation. Ranger had confirmed Lily's words in a way no human testimony could fully replicate. The judge called for a brief recess, but no one moved. The room was a suspended universe of tension, each participant frozen by the drama unfolding in front of them. The media frenzy outside could wait. Here in this courtroom, truth had become something almost tangible, as if the air itself vibrated with it. Lily, sensing the weight of all eyes on her, took a shaky breath and repeated her two words again, louder this time. "That's him." Ranger's growl shifted slightly, evolving into a low bark, deliberate and affirming. Detective Hughes felt a cold shiver run down his spine. This was unprecedented. He had trained alongside K-9 units, witnessed their incredible abilities, yet never had he seen a child and a police dog operate as a single, unspoken unit of recognition. It was cinematic, almost unreal, but it was happening in the here and now. Every adult present instinctively leaned forward, as if proximity could somehow increase understanding or control. The energy in the room was a living, breathing force, wrapping everyone in suspense and awe. The defendant finally found his voice, a croak of disbelief. That's not," Ranger barked again, cutting him off mid-word. The sound was sharp, uncompromising, and final. The man's eyes widened further, and for the first time everyone saw the flicker of true fear, raw, unmediated, undeniable. The veneer of confidence that had carried him through months of intimidation evaporated instantly. He was exposed, revealed, and utterly vulnerable. The courtroom felt the shift in atmosphere, a collective recognition of impending justice that transcended legal formalities. Karen bent down slightly, brushing a loose curl from Lily's forehead. "You're so brave," she whispered. The little girl blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the intensity of the room and the weight of her own role. She didn't fully understand the implications of her words or Ranger's reaction, yet instinctively, she knew she had done something important. The tiny voice of innocence had pierced through layers of fear, manipulation, and darkness. And for that moment, the world felt almost sacred, charged with the raw energy of truth revealed. Officer Hernandez tightened his grip on Ranger, whose body remained rigid and alert. "Keep him steady," he whispered to Detective Hughes, who nodded. "No sudden moves. We can't risk anything now." Ranger's eyes never left the defendant, who was visibly trembling. The room felt like it might shatter under the pressure. Every eye was fixed, every heartbeat felt accelerated, every whisper amplified. This wasn't just a courtroom drama anymore. It was a crescendo of fear, courage, and revelation that demanded attention and respect. The judge's gavel came down once more, and the courtroom collectively inhaled. "We will continue," she said, voice firmer this time, acknowledging that no one could suppress the raw energy present. "All parties will maintain composure. The child witness may continue with identification." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. Every adult present, no matter how experienced, understood the gravity. This was beyond law. It was a collision of human instinct, innocence, and primal recognition, and it demanded nothing less than full attention. Lily, gathering every ounce of courage she had left, repeated her two words one final time, voice quivering yet resolute. Ranger barked sharply in response, then sat, ears pricked, a living seal of affirmation. Every person in the courtroom felt the tremor of that moment, as if reality itself had shifted slightly. The defendant's shoulders sagged, defeat etched deeply into every line of his body. This was the moment when the scales of justice began to tip, irrevocably, under the force of truth delivered in its purest, most unexpected form. The judge leaned back in her chair, momentarily still, eyes narrowing as she studied the scene. "Let the record reflect the identification made by the child witness, corroborated by the K-9 unit," she commanded, gavel striking once more. The room exhaled collectively, a wave of energy dissipating but leaving everyone changed. Reporters snapped photos, jurors blinked in stunned realization, and witnesses murmured softly among themselves. Karen held Lily tightly, rocking her gently, whispering words of comfort. Ranger remained vigilant, a silent guardian who had just helped uncover the truth in a way no human witness could. Outside the courtroom, the world was waiting. Cameras flashed, microphones hovered, and the hum of reporters' voices rose like a tide. Inside, the drama continued, yet the first victory had been claimed. The defendant, shaken to his core, sat in stunned silence, understanding that the walls of deceit around him had been penetrated by a child's memory and a dog's instincts. Detective Hughes and Officer Hernandez exchanged knowing glances, both silently acknowledging that the story unfolding before them would be remembered for years, if not decades, as a remarkable, almost cinematic convergence of courage, innocence, and unerring instinct. And in the center of it all, Lily Carter, exhausted yet resolute, clung to her mother. The tiny voice that had spoken 2 words had changed the course of a trial, shifted the balance of justice, and captivated the hearts of everyone present. Ranger, faithful and unyielding, sat alert, a living testament to loyalty, instinct, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. The room hummed with energy, curiosity, and suspense, each person aware that this was far from over, and that the next moments could escalate beyond anyone's imagination. The courtroom had settled into a fragile calm, but it was the type of calm that carried electricity, like the heavy pause before a storm breaks. The defendant sat slumped in his chair, hands still cuffed, eyes darting nervously as though every person, every shadow, might leap forward and confirm his guilt. Ranger, the German shepherd, remained coiled like a predator in repose, eyes fixed unwaveringly on the man whose dark secrets had finally been exposed. Tiny Lily Carter, 3 years old, was tucked into her mother's arms, her small frame shaking, eyes wide and haunted, but resolute. Detective Hughes leaned forward, watching the subtle interaction between child and dog, heart hammering. He had been on cases where evidence was overwhelming, but this was different. This was visceral. This was truth, primal and undeniable, revealed not through documents or witness statements, but through instinct and innocence. Officer Hernandez adjusted Ranger's harness, keeping him steady but allowing the dog to maintain his focus. Every muscle in Ranger's body radiated tension, energy, and unwavering determination. The courtroom had transformed into a stage where fear, bravery, and instinct converged, each element amplifying the other. Karen whispered softly to Lily, trying to steady her trembling daughter. "You're safe, baby, just hold on." Lily nodded faintly, glancing at Ranger. She had begun to sense the gravity of what had occurred, though she could not fully comprehend it. Her small voice had shifted the course of events, and now the courtroom seemed suspended, waiting for the next moment. Prosecutor Emily Rhodes rose, heels clicking sharply against the polished floor, eyes sharp as she surveyed the room. "Your Honor," she said, "if permitted, we would like the child witness to indicate the location of the crime scene." The judge, a woman known for her precision and command, studied the situation carefully. "Very well," she said, voice firm. "All precautions must be taken. The witness may indicate to the jury, the defendant, and law enforcement the location. Let it be noted that all personnel are to remain calm and not influence the child's testimony." Her gavel hit with a controlled echo. The room held its collective breath. Every adult present understood the enormity of the moment. A child's memory and a dog's instinct were about to collide with decades of law, procedure, and human deception. Detective Hughes motioned subtly to Officer Hernandez. "Slow," he whispered. Hernandez nodded. Ranger, ears pricked, tail taut, moved forward slightly, keeping the defendant directly in his line of sight. Lily, encouraged by her mother, took a trembling step forward, gripping Karen's hand tightly. Her tiny voice, quivering yet clear, said the 2 words again. "That alley." A low murmur rippled through the courtroom. The defendant's face went pale, muscles tightening as recognition and fear flooded him. Emily Rhodes guided Lily gently, kneeling to her level. "Show us, honey," she said softly, "where it happened." The little girl's hands trembled as she pointed in the direction of a diagram displayed for the jury. Ranger growled low and deliberate, stepping closer to the defendant, eyes never leaving him. The dog's instincts were unerring. He had been trained to protect, detect, and respond to threats, but now he seemed almost human in his understanding, reading danger, recognition, and guilt simultaneously. The courtroom leaned forward collectively, sensing the unfolding drama like a tightly wound coil ready to snap. The defendant's jaw tightened, fingers twitching, trying to compose himself. He shifted slightly in his chair, but Ranger barked sharply, a single commanding sound that echoed like a warning. Whispers ran through the room. The jury leaned in, jurors gripping their notepads and pens but unable to look away. Witnesses gasped quietly. Reporters clicked cameras and scribbled notes feverishly. It was a living tableau of tension, courage, and raw human emotion. The energy seemed to thrum in the air, a palpable force that made every heartbeat echo in the ears of those present. Karen whispered reassurances again. "You're so brave, baby. You're helping everyone." Lily blinked back tears, overwhelmed, yet she nodded, stepping slightly forward. Her small finger traced a line on the diagram, pointing toward the area where the incident had occurred. Ranger growled again, a deep, vibrating sound that seemed to hum through the floorboards. The defendant flinched visibly, recoiling in his chair as though the dog's very presence physically pressed down upon him. For the first time, he seemed truly exposed, vulnerable, and entirely at the mercy of truth revealed in the simplest yet most profound form. Detective Hughes exchanged a glance with his partner, Detective Sanchez. Neither spoke, yet both knew. The case had shifted irreversibly. Ranger's reaction was absolute, definitive. A trained K-9 unit, responding to the child's 2 words, had corroborated the memory of a 3-year-old who had faced unimaginable fear. The energy in the room was almost unbearable, like electricity arcing in the space between every observer and participant. The courtroom had become a living organism, each person reacting, waiting, anticipating the next move. The defense attorney leaned in urgently, whispering to his client. The defendant, though shaking, opened his mouth to protest, but Ranger barked again, louder, sharper, commanding silence. His instincts were unyielding. Every adult in the courtroom could see it. The veneer of control the defendant had maintained for months had vanished, replaced by primal fear that no manipulation, no legal maneuver could reverse. The child's simple 2 words had ignited a chain reaction that was unraveling carefully constructed walls of deception. Emily Rhodes crouched to Lily's level once more. "Can you show Ranger where it happened?" The child hesitated, then pointed toward the diagram again. Ranger sniffed the air, stepping forward cautiously, tail rigid, and then nudged slightly toward the marked location, growl deep and deliberate. A hush fell over the courtroom. Every person present felt the weight of the moment. The combination of child and K-9 had created an undeniable force of truth. The defendant paled further, realizing he could no longer hide behind words, lawyers, or intimidation. The courtroom itself seemed to lean forward, absorbing the tension, holding its breath. Karen hugged Lily tightly, murmuring reassurances as the little girl trembled. "It's okay, baby. You're doing amazing." Lily blinked up, overwhelmed yet aware she had done something significant. Her small voice, faint but determined, repeated the location once more. Ranger barked, a sharp, authoritative confirmation. Detective Hughes scribbled furiously in his notebook, heart pounding. Officer Hernandez kept Ranger calm but ready, sensing that the critical moment of confirmation had arrived. This was a scene unlike any they had witnessed. Cinematic, tense, raw and alive with the energy of justice revealed in its most elemental form. The judge called the courtroom to order again, but even she seemed affected by the tension, eyes narrowing thoughtfully as she observed the child, the dog, and the defendant. "Let the record reflect the identification and corroboration," she said firmly, gavel striking once more. "Proceed with caution." The courtroom exhaled collectively, yet no one truly relaxed. The energy remained charged, palpable, ready to erupt again. The child's words, Ranger's instincts, and the defendant's palpable fear had created a living tableau of suspense, courage, and truth. Outside the courtroom, the world waited with bated breath. Cameras flashed, and reporters whispered urgently to one another, sensing they were witnessing history. Inside, the drama continued. Lily's small frame shook slightly as she remained in her mother's arms, exhausted yet unbroken. Ranger sat poised, alert, a silent guardian whose instincts had bridged the gap between trauma and justice. The defendant's composure had dissolved entirely, replaced by fear and the dawning realization that he had been caught in a web woven from the most unlikely sources: a child and a dog. Detective Hughes and Officer Hernandez exchanged a knowing glance. The trial had crossed into extraordinary territory, where instinct, courage, and the unfiltered memory of a 3-year-old converged with legal procedure. Every heartbeat in the room carried tension, suspense, and raw emotion. The next moments would determine how this extraordinary testimony would be formalized in the courtroom, and whether the truth revealed by 2 words and a dog's instinct would stand against the machinery of defense and deceit. Karen held Lily close, whispering again, "You're safe. You're so brave." Lily's eyes glimmered with tears, small hands clutching her mother tightly. She had faced a darkness that few adults could confront, and in her tiny, trembling way, she had changed the course of events. Ranger remained vigilant, a living, breathing guardian whose instincts had confirmed the memory that no one had dared hope would surface. The courtroom, frozen in suspense, understood that this was far from over, and that the story, still unfolding, would reach its climax in moments yet unseen. The defendant, pale and trembling, shifted uneasily in his seat, realizing that he could no longer control the narrative. The room had been transformed. The delicate, impossible bond between child and dog had revealed a truth that was undeniable. Detective Hughes felt a shiver down his spine. Ranger's reaction was absolute, unequivocal. This trial had become a dramatic dance of fear, courage, and revelation, with each participant caught in its unstoppable current. Every eye remained fixed, every breath held, every heart pounding in anticipation of what would come next. And in the center of it all, Lily Carter, tiny and fragile yet remarkably brave, clung to her mother. Her 2 words had shifted the momentum of a trial, transformed fear into revelation, and captivated the hearts and minds of everyone present. Ranger remained steadfast, alert, a silent sentinel confirming that truth had been spoken and that justice had begun to find its footing. The courtroom hummed with energy, suspense, and anticipation, knowing that the next moments would only escalate the tension, further unraveling a story that had begun with darkness, but was now illuminated by courage, instinct, and unshakable truth. The courtroom remained suspended in a tense quiet, though every soul inside felt the weight of the moment pressing down like a storm about to break. The defendant sat slumped, pale and trembling, his eyes darting nervously from the gallery to the jury and back again. His hands were cuffed, yet they twitched uncontrollably, as though trying to manipulate reality itself. Ranger, the German shepherd, stood at the ready, muscles taut, tail rigid, eyes locked onto the man who had shattered a child's sense of safety. Every breath, every heartbeat seemed amplified in the vast, polished room. Detective Hughes shifted in his seat, pen poised but forgotten, mind racing. He had seen trauma before and K-9 units in action countless times, yet nothing matched this convergence. A child's memory, fragile and trembling, reinforced by a dog's instinctual response, was a combination almost impossible to ignore. Hernandez kept a steady grip on Ranger, feeling the subtle vibrations of his growl through the leash. Each low rumble of the dog's chest carried the weight of undeniable recognition. The defendant flinched with every sound, realizing with mounting horror that his carefully constructed facade had crumbled. Karen held Lily tightly, whispering softly, "You're so brave, baby. You're safe now." Lily clung to her mother, trembling but resolute. The 2 words she had spoken repeatedly, so small, so fragile, yet so powerful, had transformed the courtroom into a theater of tension, courage, and revelation. Her voice had pierced the veil of fear and secrecy surrounding the defendant, and Ranger's instinctive confirmation left no room for doubt. The room seemed to vibrate with energy, a shared understanding of truth revealed in its rawest form. The judge leaned forward slightly, her expression unreadable, eyes sharp and scanning the room. "We will proceed with the testimony of the child witness," she announced. "All parties are instructed to remain calm. The child may indicate the sequence of events for the record." The gavel struck lightly but with authority, a punctuation that did little to quell the electricity in the courtroom. The moment had shifted. Every adult present understood. The case had entered a new, unpredictable phase. Emily Rhodes, the prosecuting attorney, crouched to Lily's level. "Can you tell us what happened next, honey?" she asked, voice gentle but encouraging. Lily's small lips quivered as she nodded faintly, glancing at Ranger for reassurance. The dog's ears pricked slightly, tail stiff but unmoving, a silent guardian, a living bridge between memory and confirmation. Corinne whispered encouragement, brushing a stray curl from her daughter's forehead. Lily took a trembling breath, pointing toward a diagram of the alley and the surrounding buildings. Her voice, small but firm, said the words again. "He took me." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The jury leaned forward, jurors gripping the edges of their notepads, unable to look away. Witnesses murmured softly. The defendant's face went ashen, his eyes wide with disbelief and fear. He opened his mouth to protest, but Ranger barked sharply, cutting him off mid-word. The sound, precise and commanding, reverberated against the wooden walls. Every person present felt the weight of truth, instinct, and courage converging in a single, undeniable force. The defendant's carefully maintained control crumbled further with each heartbeat. Detective Hughes scribbled furiously in his notebook, adrenaline surging. This is extraordinary," he muttered under his breath. Officer Hernandez kept a steady grip on Ranger, whose body remained taut, eyes never leaving the defendant. The dog's instincts were flawless, responding to a child's words, a memory born of trauma and confirming what humans could only suspect. The combination of innocence and instinct had created an almost supernatural momentum, one that could not be ignored, contradicted, or erased. Every person in the room sensed it. The defense attorney leaned in urgently, whispering to his client, but the defendant barely heard. His focus was entirely on the child and the dog, the two living witnesses that had unraveled his lies and exposed his guilt. He shifted uneasily, knees knocking together, and tried to maintain composure, yet Ranger barked again, more insistent this time. The sound sliced through the room, demanding attention, and the defendant recoiled. Fear radiated off him in waves, subtle yet palpable, infecting the room with a sense of inevitability. Justice, it seemed, had taken physical form. Emily Rhodes guided Lily gently as she indicated the sequence of events on the diagram. Each movement was deliberate, careful, and precise. Ranger growled low and deliberate, a living confirmation of the child's narrative. The jury leaned in, jurors whispering to one another, exchanging looks of disbelief, awe, and growing certainty. Witnesses shifted in their seats, murmuring softly. Even the judge seemed momentarily taken aback by the force of the moment. The courtroom, once orderly, had transformed into a living, breathing organism of suspense and revelation. Corinne whispered reassurances again, voice shaking. "You're doing so well, baby. You're helping everyone." Lily blinked back tears, overwhelmed but determined. Her small hands trembled as she pointed again, speaking softly yet unmistakably. Ranger barked, a sound of recognition, loyalty, and affirmation. The defendant's composure crumbled further. Sweat glistened on his forehead and his jaw tightened with panic. Every muscle in his body screamed fear. The courtroom collectively felt it. The undeniable truth that this man could no longer hide from, suppress, or escape. Detective Hughes leaned in, whispering to Hernandez. "We need to document this precisely, every detail, every reaction." Hernandez nodded, keeping Ranger steady while nodding subtle cues of recognition and affirmation. The child's memory and the dog's instinct had created a unique corroboration, one that transcended conventional evidence. The courtroom was not just observing a trial. It was witnessing a rare and extraordinary convergence of courage, innocence, and instinct that had irrevocably shifted the trajectory of justice. The defendant attempted to speak again, words tumbling out in disjointed fragments, but Ranger barked sharply once more. The man flinched, realizing that no verbal protest could undo the momentum set in motion by a child's memory and a dog's unwavering instincts. The room was thick with anticipation, tension, and suspense, every observer acutely aware that history was being written in real time. Every heartbeat echoed with the possibility of revelation, every whisper amplified, every glance pregnant with fear, hope, or awe. Emily Rhodes crouched again, voice soft yet steady. "Lily, can you show us where it happened?" Lily's small hand trembled as she traced the path on the diagram. Ranger growled low and deliberate, stepping closer to the defendant, a living enforcer of truth. Corinne whispered encouragement, brushing her daughter's hair back gently. "It's okay, baby. You're so brave." Lily's lips quivered, eyes shining with tears, yet she repeated the sequence clearly, pointing again to the diagram. Ranger barked sharply in affirmation. The room collectively held its breath. The judge called for order, but even she seemed affected by the intensity. "Let the record reflect the child witness's identification and the corroboration by the K-9 unit," she said firmly, gavel striking once. The courtroom collectively exhaled, though the tension remained thick, almost tangible. This was no ordinary trial. It was a collision of trauma, memory, instinct, and truth. Every person present was acutely aware of the extraordinary forces at play, and that the next moments could escalate beyond anyone's expectations. The defendant's shoulders sagged, defeated and pale. He had been cornered by forces he could not manipulate, a child's memory and a dog's instinct, intertwined to form a confirmation of guilt no argument or legal maneuver could reverse. Detective Hughes scribbled notes furiously, heart pounding. Officer Hernandez kept Ranger calm but vigilant. Corinne held Lily tightly, whispering reassurances as her daughter trembled from exhaustion and fear, yet remained remarkably resilient. The room hummed with anticipation, everyone sensing that the climax of this extraordinary courtroom drama was approaching. Outside, reporters whispered urgently, cameras flashing incessantly. Social media would explode within minutes, capturing the surreal combination of child, dog, and courtroom tension. Inside, the drama was far from over. The defendant, trembling and exposed, had no options left. Ranger remained alert, a sentinel of instinct and truth. Lily, tiny yet brave beyond her years, had transformed fear into revelation, and her courage had created a tangible force that now permeated the courtroom. Every witness, juror, and attorney understood the gravity. The final act was building, and the next moments would determine the full scope of justice. Corinne hugged Lily close, whispering one last reassurance. "You're safe, baby. You've done something incredible." Lily blinked up, small hands clutching her mother, exhausted yet resolute. Ranger remained vigilant, a living, breathing enforcer of the truth that had been revealed. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation, suspense, and awe, each person acutely aware that history was unfolding. The child, the dog, and the exposed defendant had created a tableau of courage, instinct, and revelation that would not soon be forgotten. And in that tense, charged room, every heartbeat, every glance, every tremor of fear or courage carried the weight of the extraordinary. The trial had shifted irreversibly. Justice was no longer theoretical. It had begun to manifest in real, undeniable ways. Lily's 2 words had set off a chain reaction. Ranger's instincts had confirmed them, and the defendant's fear had become tangible. The courtroom waited, breath held, knowing that the next moments would only escalate the tension, revealing the full impact of bravery, memory, and unflinching truth. The tension in the courtroom was almost unbearable, as though the polished walls themselves were holding their collective breath. The defendant sat slumped in his chair, face pale, hands trembling despite the cuffs, every muscle taut with anxiety. Ranger, the German shepherd, remained a statue of focus, ears pricked, muscles coiled like steel springs, eyes locked unwaveringly on the man who had shattered a child's world. Tiny Lily Carter, only 3, sat nestled against her mother, Corinne, a flicker of fear and exhaustion in her wide, expressive eyes. But beneath it, a seed of determination had begun to grow. Detective Hughes scribbled notes furiously while glancing at Lily and Ranger. He had trained and observed K-9 units for years, yet never had he seen such an extraordinary alignment of human memory and canine instinct. A child's recollection, trembling, fragmented, yet remarkably precise, was now being reinforced in real time by Ranger's trained responses. Hernandez adjusted the leash subtly, keeping the dog steady but letting him maintain the critical proximity that ensured every motion and growl would be meaningful. Every subtle cue mattered. One misstep could disrupt this delicate balance. Corinne whispered reassurance to Lily. "You're doing amazing, baby. Just hold on." The little girl nodded faintly, hands clutching her mother's jacket. She could sense in the fragments she understood that something important was unfolding, that her words carried weight far beyond her comprehension. She had faced fear head-on, spoken truth into a room filled with adults who had long dismissed it, and now she was at the center of a living testament to courage. Ranger's growl punctuated each moment, a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the courtroom floor, echoing in every chest present. The judge, aware of the extraordinary circumstances, cleared her throat. "We will now allow the child to indicate further details of the sequence of events," she said, voice firm but measured. "All parties must maintain composure. The court recognizes the sensitivity of this testimony." Gavel in hand, she attempted to restore order, but the room still vibrated with the tension generated by what had already transpired. Every participant, the jury, witnesses, reporters, attorneys, remained acutely aware that they were witnessing a rare, almost cinematic collision of innocence, instinct, and unflinching truth. Emily Rhodes, the prosecuting attorney, stepped forward again, crouching to Lily's level. "Honey, can you show us what happened next?" she asked gently. Lily's hands trembled as she pointed toward the diagram of the alley where the incident had occurred. Her voice quivered as she spoke. "He made me go there." Ranger growled low, deliberate, muscles rippling with instinctive recognition. The defendant flinched in his chair, eyes widening with disbelief, realizing that the evidence, already overwhelming, was now undeniable. A faint whisper ran through the gallery. One of the witnesses, previously silent, muttered, I saw him." The statement, though quiet, carried immense weight. The defendant's panic became more palpable. He twisted in his seat, trying to regain control, but Ranger's growl intensified, cutting through any attempt at disruption. Detective Hughes exchanged a look with Officer Hernandez, both recognizing the rare perfection of this sequence. Child memory, K-9 confirmation, corroborating witness, all aligning to create an unbreakable chain of evidence. The defendant attempted to speak, voice cracking, but Ranger barked sharply, silencing him instantly. The dog's instincts were precise, unyielding, and commanding. Even the most seasoned attorneys and courtroom personnel felt the force of the moment, a palpable energy that hung over every inch of the room. The defendant's eyes darted frantically, seeking escape, validation, or intervention, but there was none. The room, charged with suspense and awe, seemed to shrink around him, compressing his space of control until all he could feel was exposure. Corinne leaned down slightly, brushing Lily's hair back gently. "You're brave, baby. You're helping everyone." Lily's small hands trembled, eyes shining with tears, yet she pointed again toward the diagram. "He hurt me," she whispered. Ranger barked in affirmation, a sound sharp, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. The jury leaned forward, whispers circulating, faces pale with the gravity of what they were witnessing. The defendant's bravado had evaporated, replaced by stark, undeniable fear. Detective Hughes scribbled frantically, heart racing. This is unprecedented," he muttered under his breath. Hernandez kept Ranger close, nodding every subtle movement, every shift in the defendant's posture. The dog's instincts had become a living conduit of truth. A 3-year-old child, trembling yet resolute, had spoken, and the K-9 unit had reinforced her memory in a way that no document, testimony, or physical evidence could replicate. Every adult present recognized the extraordinary nature of this moment. Emily Rhodes guided Lily gently to indicate the path the defendant had forced her along. Each movement of the tiny child was mirrored by Ranger's subtle adjustments: a step forward, a shift of focus, a low growl at the exact point of recognition. The courtroom collectively held its breath, watching the interplay between innocence and instinct. The defendant's face drained further of color, realization dawning. He could no longer manipulate, intimidate, or lie his way out. The room's tension had become a living entity, pressing down on every chest, compelling everyone to acknowledge the weight of truth. Karen whispered again, a trembling comfort. "You're safe, baby. You're helping so many people." Lily nodded faintly, eyes darting to Ranger, who stepped forward cautiously, tail stiff, muscles coiled. The dog's instincts had aligned perfectly with the child's recollection, creating a scene that transcended traditional testimony. The defendant's panic intensified, his eyes darting frantically to any adult who might intervene. But no one moved. Every gaze was fixed on the intersection of child, dog, and truth, a triangle of justice in its purest form. The judge's gavel hit lightly again. "Let the record reflect the child's identification and the corroboration by the K-9 unit," she said firmly. "All parties must proceed with caution." The room exhaled collectively, but the tension remained. Every person present felt it. The case had entered a zone where instinct, memory, and courage overrode procedure. The defendant, now pale and trembling, realized he was exposed, vulnerable, and powerless. The room vibrated with anticipation. Every whisper, breath, and heartbeat amplified. Detective Hughes leaned in to whisper to Hernandez, "Document everything. The sequence, the reactions, Ranger's responses. This is critical." Hernandez nodded, noting subtle cues in Ranger's posture, the dog's growls, and the defendant's reactions. This was more than evidence. It was a living testament to courage and instinct, a moment that would redefine how testimony could intersect with primal recognition. Karen held Lily tightly, rocking her gently, whispering reassurances as her daughter trembled with exhaustion, yet remained remarkably composed for a 3-year-old. The defendant tried again to speak, voice cracking, but Ranger barked once more, a commanding, authoritative sound that demanded attention. His body tensed, eyes wide with fear. The courtroom felt the shift. The walls of deception had been penetrated by forces no human could counteract. A child's memory and a dog's instinct, converging with terrifying precision. The room hummed with suspense, electricity, and the weight of truth in its most raw and undeniable form. Emily Rhodes crouched to Lily's level again. "Can you show us exactly what he did next?" Lily's small hand trembled as she indicated the final steps on the diagram. Ranger growled, a low, affirming sound. The jury leaned in, jurors whispering, faces pale. Witnesses murmured softly. The defendant, realizing he could no longer escape the truth, slumped further. Sweat glistened on his forehead. Fear radiated from him in waves, infecting the room with an almost tangible sense of inevitability. Karen whispered reassurances, voice trembling. "It's okay, baby. You're helping everyone." Lily blinked back tears, small hands clutching her mother's jacket. Ranger barked sharply, signaling the completion of his instinctual confirmation. The judge called the courtroom to order, but the air remained thick with suspense. The trial had transformed into a cinematic collision of innocence, instinct, and human emotion. Every observer understood that the climax was approaching, and the next moments would reveal the full weight of courage, memory, and unflinching truth. The defendant's shoulders sagged, defeated. His fear was palpable, a raw exposure of guilt that no legal maneuver could conceal. Detective Hughes scribbled notes furiously, heart pounding. Officer Hernandez kept Ranger calm but alert, the dog's eyes never leaving the man who had terrorized a child. Karen held Lily tightly, whispering one last reassurance. "You're safe, baby. You've done something incredible." Lily, exhausted but resolute, nodded faintly. Ranger remained vigilant, a living enforcer of the truth that had been revealed. And as the courtroom hummed with suspense, every breath, glance, and heartbeat carried the weight of history in the making. Justice, for once, had manifested through the unlikeliest of alliances. A 3-year-old girl and a police dog, both fearless in their own way, converging to expose a darkness no human had been able to fully reveal. The room waited, breath held, aware that the next moments would escalate the drama even further, bringing the extraordinary story closer to its unforgettable climax. The courtroom seemed suspended in a tangible bubble of tension, where every heartbeat echoed like a drumbeat and every breath carried the weight of impending revelation. The defendant's eyes darted nervously, sweat glistening on his pale forehead. His carefully constructed confidence had completely evaporated, replaced by raw panic. Ranger, the German shepherd, stood a few feet away, body coiled and alert, eyes locked onto him like a predator who knew its prey's secrets. Tiny Lily Carter, nestled against her mother, Corinne, trembled slightly, exhausted yet resolute. She had become the improbable epicenter of a storm that no adult could fully control. Detective Hughes leaned forward, pen frozen above paper, captivated by the convergence of innocence, instinct, and raw truth. He had seen countless cases and interrogations, but never one like this, where a child's memory, fragile yet precise, had been amplified and corroborated by a K-9 unit trained to detect deception and danger. Officer Hernandez adjusted Ranger's harness, keeping the dog steady while allowing his instincts to guide his movements. Ranger shifted slightly, muscles rippling, a subtle growl vibrating through his chest. The sound reverberated through the courtroom, a low, primal warning that amplified the tension. Corinne whispered softly to Lily, brushing a curl from her forehead. "You're safe, baby. You're doing so well." Lily blinked, glancing at Ranger, who stepped a fraction closer to the defendant, tail stiff, body taut with focus. She had begun to sense that her words carried an immense weight, that the smallest syllables could shift reality. Her voice, fragile yet clear, had already altered the course of the trial, and now every eye in the room was fixed on her, waiting for the next revelation. The judge, keenly aware of the extraordinary circumstances, leaned forward. "We will continue the testimony of the child witness," she said, her voice firm but measured. "All parties are to remain calm. This court recognizes the sensitivity of the testimony and the unique circumstances surrounding this case." Gavel in hand, she attempted to maintain order, though the room seemed to vibrate with electricity. Every adult present understood that this trial had transcended ordinary procedure and was now a living, breathing drama of courage, instinct, and truth. Emily Rhodes, the prosecuting attorney, crouched to Lily's level again. "Can you show us exactly what happened next, honey?" she asked gently. Lily's small hand trembled as she indicated the final portion of the diagram. Her voice, small but resolute, spoke with the weight of lived experience. "He made me stay until," Ranger growled low and deliberate, stepping slightly forward, a living enforcer of confirmation. The defendant's jaw tightened, his eyes darting desperately for any means of escape or interruption, but the room offered none. The defendant's panic escalated as witnesses stirred, whispers circulating like sparks in dry tinder. One witness, previously hesitant, rose slightly. I saw him there," she murmured, voice shaking. The simple statement reinforced Lily's words, further tightening the web of truth around the defendant. His body stiffened, trembling, realizing he could no longer manipulate, intimidate, or dismiss the testimony. Ranger barked sharply, cutting off any protest mid-word. The sound was commanding, authoritative, and final. The courtroom collectively held its breath. Detective Hughes scribbled furiously in his notebook, heart hammering. Hernandez kept Ranger steady but alert, noting every subtle shift in the dog's posture and every minute reaction from the defendant. Ranger's instincts had perfectly mirrored the child's recollection, creating a live confirmation of events that transcended ordinary evidence. Corinne held Lily tightly, whispering encouragement, as the little girl's courage shone despite exhaustion. Every adult present recognized the rare, almost cinematic convergence of memory, instinct, and unflinching truth. The defendant attempted to speak, voice cracking, but Ranger barked again, silencing him instantly. The judge leaned slightly forward, eyebrows raised, acknowledging the palpable tension in the room. Every person present could feel it. This was not just a courtroom proceeding. It was a crucible of fear, courage, and revelation. The defendant's carefully maintained control had disintegrated, leaving him exposed in a way that no legal maneuver could conceal. Karen whispered again, voice trembling. "It's okay, baby. You're helping everyone." Lily's small hands trembled as she pointed again to the diagram, completing the final step of the sequence. Ranger growled, a low, affirming sound that resonated through the polished wood floors. The jury leaned forward, whispering to one another, eyes wide with disbelief and awe. Witnesses murmured softly. The defendant's posture sagged further, his face a canvas of fear, his every attempt at regaining composure thwarted by instinct and truth. Emily Rhodes guided Lily through the final steps of her testimony. "Can you show the jury where she asked gently. Lily pointed, voice small but unwavering. Ranger barked sharply, stepping closer to the defendant, muscles rippling with precise, instinctive acknowledgement. The room collectively froze, every heartbeat, every glance, every whisper filled with suspense. The defendant's eyes widened in recognition. He could no longer deny or manipulate what had been revealed. The energy in the room became almost physical, pressing against the walls, saturating every participant with anticipation. Detective Hughes exchanged a glance with Hernandez. "Document every reaction, every subtle cue," he murmured. Hernandez nodded, noting Ranger's posture, growls, and responses. The combination of a child's courage and a dog's instinct had created a unique, irrefutable force. Karen held Lily tightly, whispering reassurances as the child trembled but remained remarkably composed. The defendant realized the walls of deception had collapsed entirely, leaving him defenseless before the combined weight of innocence, instinct, and truth. The defendant's attempts at protest were cut off again by Ranger's sharp bark. The dog's body was taut, every muscle coiled, eyes unwavering. The courtroom's collective focus sharpened, everyone sensing that the climax of the trial was imminent. The defendant's fear became almost tangible, radiating outward like heat from a fire. He could see, hear, and feel the truth manifesting before him in ways he could not counteract or control. The tension in the room seemed to stretch, almost solid, pressing against every chest, every pair of eyes, every pen poised above paper. Emily Rhodes crouched one last time to Lily's level. "Show us, honey, exactly what happened," she said gently. Lily's small hands trembled, pointing to the diagram with painstaking precision. Her voice quivered, but she repeated the final words clearly. Ranger barked sharply in affirmation, a living, breathing acknowledgement of every detail. The jury leaned forward, the courtroom collectively silent. The defendant's composure disintegrated entirely, replaced by a raw, visceral fear that no amount of legal strategy could mask. Karen whispered softly, tears glistening. "You're so brave, baby. You've done something incredible." Lily nodded faintly, eyes wide but resolute. Ranger remained alert, a silent sentinel, eyes never leaving the man who had threatened the child's safety. The courtroom hummed with suspense and awe, aware that the climax of the story was imminent, that the extraordinary convergence of memory, instinct, and courage had reached its tipping point. Every participant understood that the truth had been fully revealed, yet the emotional resolution was still to come. The judge's gavel came down, calling for order, but even she seemed affected by the palpable tension. "Let the record reflect the child witness's identification and the corroboration by the K-9 unit," she announced. The courtroom collectively exhaled, though the tension remained almost tangible. The defendant, pale and trembling, had no options left. His fear radiated outward, infecting the room, a living confirmation of the overwhelming power of truth when reinforced by courage and instinct. Detective Hughes scribbled notes furiously, heart hammering. Officer Hernandez kept Ranger calm but vigilant, noting the dog's precise, deliberate movements. Karen held Lily close, whispering reassurances as the little girl trembled with exhaustion, yet remained remarkably resolute. Every adult present understood the magnitude. A child's memory, validated by a dog's instinct, had irrevocably shifted the trajectory of justice. The next moments would reveal the full consequences of courage, fear, and unflinching truth, as the trial hurtled toward its unforgettable climax. And in that courtroom, every breath, every glance, every quiver carried the weight of history in the making. Justice, for once, had manifested through the unlikeliest of alliances. A 3-year-old girl and a police dog, both fearless in their own ways, converging to expose a darkness no human had been able to fully reveal. The room waited, suspended, knowing that the next moments would escalate the drama even further, bringing the extraordinary story to its emotional and cinematic apex. The courtroom felt like it had been suspended in time, each heartbeat echoing like a drum, each breath held in collective anticipation. The defendant slumped in his chair, pale, shaking, utterly exposed. His carefully maintained facade had crumbled completely. Ranger, the German shepherd, remained a living sentinel, body taut, eyes unwavering, every muscle radiating a silent command. Truth cannot hide. Tiny Lily Carter, 3 years old, sat nestled in her mother's arms, exhausted yet resolute. Her 2 words had already shifted the trajectory of the trial, but the courtroom awaited the final act, the confirmation that justice would not merely whisper, it would roar. Detective Hughes leaned forward, pen poised, though his thoughts raced too fast to capture fully. He had witnessed intense moments in his career, but nothing like this. A child's memory amplified and validated by a trained K-9, exposing darkness that adults had long failed to confront. Officer Hernandez adjusted Ranger's harness, keeping him calm but allowing instinct to guide his posture, a subtle nudge that emphasized every threat, every recognition, every undeniable truth. Ranger's body was an instrument of certainty, vibrating with a low growl that reverberated through the polished floors. Karen whispered gently to Lily, brushing a stray curl from her forehead. "You're safe now, baby. You've been so brave." Lily blinked, gazing up at Ranger, sensing his protective presence. Despite exhaustion, she understood in the fragments she could grasp that her words had power. They had pierced deception, fear, and denial, and now the room waited on her next action. Every pair of eyes was riveted on the child and the dog, a duo of innocence and instinct that had transformed ordinary testimony into something extraordinary. The judge, poised and commanding, cleared her throat. "We will now conclude the testimony of the child witness," she said. Her voice carried authority, yet even she seemed affected by the palpable energy in the room. "All parties will proceed with caution and maintain composure. The court recognizes the unprecedented circumstances of this case." The gavel struck lightly, but the sound did little to quell the electricity in the air. The courtroom was alive, a charged arena of tension, suspense, and raw emotion. Emily Rhodes, the prosecuting attorney, crouched gently to Lily's level. "Honey, can you tell us if that's everything?" she asked. Lily's small hand trembled as she nodded faintly. "Yes, everything," she whispered, voice quivering but firm. Ranger growled low and deliberate, a living confirmation of her final words. The defendant's jaw tightened, eyes darting frantically, realizing that the truth had fully eclipsed any pretense of control he had once wielded. The energy in the room felt almost tangible, pressing on every adult present, demanding acknowledgement of the gravity of what had occurred. Whispers ran through the courtroom like an invisible current. Witnesses shifted, the jury leaned forward, and even the judge seemed momentarily affected by the dramatic convergence unfolding before her. The defendant's panic deepened, each attempt to protest or speak thwarted by Ranger's commanding presence. The dog's instincts had become an unyielding, living conduit for the truth, amplifying Lily's bravery and leaving no room for denial. The room collectively absorbed the weight of it all, aware that they were witnessing a moment of historical and emotional significance. Detective Hughes scribbled furiously, adrenaline pumping. Hernandez kept Ranger calm but alert, nodding every subtle cue of recognition and every tiny twitch that confirmed the defendant's guilt. The child's memory and the dog's instincts had created a living tableau of undeniable truth. Karen held Lily close, whispering reassurance. "You're so brave, baby. You've helped everyone." Lily trembled but nodded, small hands gripping her mother. The courtroom had become a stage where courage, fear, and instinct collided with breathtaking intensity. The defendant attempted to speak again, voice cracking with desperation, but Ranger barked sharply, silencing him instantly. His body was coiled, alert, and commanding. Every adult in the courtroom could feel the force of the moment. The defendant's control had completely vanished, replaced by raw panic and helplessness. The jury leaned in, eyes wide with disbelief. The witnesses murmured softly, and the gallery remained frozen, collectively holding its breath. Justice, it seemed, had manifested in the most improbable yet undeniable form: a child's voice and a dog's instinct. Emily Rhodes rose slightly, addressing the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice steady, "you have witnessed something extraordinary. A child's testimony, corroborated by a trained K-9, has identified the sequence of events with clarity, courage, and precision. No human manipulation can negate the truth revealed here today." She gestured subtly toward Ranger, whose posture reinforced her point. The room seemed to shiver with the weight of those words, the defendant's fear now fully palpable, no longer theoretical. Karen whispered again, brushing Lily's hair back. "You did it, baby. You've done something incredible." Lily blinked back tears, small lips quivering. She had faced the unimaginable, and now, in her tiny, trembling way, she had changed the course of justice. Ranger barked once more, a sharp, definitive note of affirmation. The courtroom, charged with suspense, seemed to hold onto that single sound, the resonance of courage and truth echoing through every polished wall, every wooden bench, every tense adult presence. The judge called the courtroom to order one last time. "Let the record reflect the child's testimony and the corroboration by the K-9 unit," she declared. Gavel struck. The room exhaled collectively, but the energy remained. The defendant, defeated, could no longer hide, no longer resist, no longer manipulate. His fear was raw, tangible, and impossible to ignore. Detective Hughes and Officer Hernandez exchanged a glance, acknowledging the rare and extraordinary nature of the moment. As the jurors absorbed the testimony, their expressions shifted subtly. Fear gave way to understanding, disbelief to certainty. The defendant's unraveling was complete. Ranger's presence was a constant, living reminder of truth, while Lily, fragile yet brave, had become the improbable hero of the day. Outside, reporters waited eagerly, cameras poised. Inside, the courtroom hummed with the tension and awe of history unfolding, a drama no script could match. Karen whispered softly to Lily, voice trembling with pride. "You've helped so many people, baby. You've been so brave." Lily blinked up, exhausted but resolute, small hands clutching her mother. Ranger remained alert, muscles taut, eyes locked onto the defendant, silent but unyielding. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation, knowing the trial's climax was near. The extraordinary story, child, dog, and justice converging, was about to reach its cinematic apex. Emily Rhodes addressed the jury one final time. "The evidence you have witnessed is not ordinary. It is the product of courage, instinct, and truth. You have seen a child speak, a dog confirm, and a defendant exposed. Your responsibility now is to acknowledge the full weight of this revelation in your deliberations." The jury members nodded subtly, absorbing the magnitude of what they had seen. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the final reckoning. The defendant, trembling, muttered incoherently, voice quivering with fear. Ranger barked once more, a definitive sound that cut through every whisper, every heartbeat, every attempt at manipulation. His body coiled, muscles rippling, eyes unwavering. Detective Hughes scribbled final notes, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Hernandez kept Ranger calm but alert, aware that the final moments of this extraordinary courtroom drama were unfolding before him. Karen hugged Lily tightly, whispering reassurances as her daughter trembled with exhaustion. "You've been so brave, baby. You've helped everyone." Lily blinked, small lips quivering, yet she held herself with remarkable composure. Ranger remained vigilant, a living guardian of truth, his growls and barks punctuating the courtroom like a rhythmic confirmation of justice realized. Every adult present felt the extraordinary energy, the convergence of courage, instinct, and revelation, and knew they were witnessing something historic. And then the moment arrived. The judge's gavel struck with finality. This court acknowledges the child's testimony, the K-9 unit's confirmation, and the evidence presented. The jury may now deliberate, fully informed by the extraordinary courage and instinct that has been revealed today. The defendant slumped further, defeated, pale, his eyes wide with realization. Ranger remained alert, unyielding, eyes locked on him. Lily, tiny and fragile, nestled against her mother, had become the hero no one expected, a living testament to courage and truth. The courtroom exhaled collectively. Cameras flashed, whispers filled the air, and reporters scribbled furiously. Justice had been served in a form that was unforgettable, raw, cinematic, and profoundly human. Ranger's instincts and Lily's bravery had combined to expose a darkness that no human could have revealed alone. The trial, though far from ordinary, had reached its climax. Every heartbeat, every glance, every tremor of fear or courage had converged to create a story that would linger in the minds of all who witnessed it. Karen held Lily close, whispering one last reassurance. "You're safe now, baby. You've done something extraordinary." Lily, exhausted but brave, clutched her mother's hand. Ranger sat alert, muscles relaxed but eyes still scanning, a silent guardian of the truth that had been revealed. The courtroom had transformed into a living stage of courage, instinct, and revelation, and everyone present understood the significance. This story would not be forgotten. And as the jurors filed out to deliberate, the energy of that extraordinary courtroom, the fear, the courage, the instinct, the raw human emotion, remained an indelible reminder that truth sometimes manifests in the most improbable and cinematic forms. A 3-year-old girl, a police dog, and the courage to speak 2 words that changed everything.